Breath of the Wild walkthrough, the Great Plateau quest, or among one of the many shrine quests, whatever it's called, the Isolated Plateau, I don't know what the quest is. So anyway, here we're going to be going for the third shrine that we have to get, and you'll also learn as soon as it becomes nighttime, the classic Zelda enemies will show up, which are these skeleton enemies. And the skeleton enemies are really nice for getting some of the monster parts that drop, like the fangs and the some of the other horns, things like that, and also some pretty good weapons, decent weapons like shields, stuff like that. But the thing that they don't drop are the guts. And getting Bokoblin guts or Moblin guts or just guts in general, they're a little bit harder of a drop for some reason, and obviously they don't drop from the skeleton enemies, so you can't really rely on them for everything. But if you really just travel around at nighttime, kill the skeleton guys, you hit them in one hit, like one hit makes them scatter into a bunch of bones, and then you hit their head, usually one or two hits, and then they die. So they're really easy enemies, and they're pretty good to kill if you want to get some of the monster parts. So that guardian that we saw there briefly is a live guardian, so just run away from that, climb up the wall to get away from it, and try to collect any other kind of weapons you might want. Here's the first spear that I am getting, and it's not really too good, it's only got 2 attack, but spears in general are just a little bit nicer. There's a frog hopping there that I did not see that would have been kind of nice to get, but we'll get frogs later on in this game if we need them. So now, to get to the shrine, we're going to need to get some cold resistance, and this will be the first real experience you will have with cold or heat. So throughout this Hyrule world, some places will get either too hot for you to handle or too cold, and you need to either make dishes that will temporarily increase your resistance, and there'll be a timer in the top left for how long that lasts, or you need to find armor that will do it for you. It's pretty hard at first to find armor that will give you triple cold or fire resist or heat resist, but it's pretty easy to find armor and dishes that will give you resist for 1 or 2 of them, and that's for the most part all you're going to need. Very, very rarely are you ever going to need the triple or total complete resistance to cold or hot, or heat, I guess. So anyway, here we're going to take yet another detour, try to kill a couple of these Bokoblins that are hanging out here. And as you notice at nighttime, they're sleeping, so if you want to shoot the beehive like I did to kind of scare them away, you can do that, but that doesn't really do anything to the Bokoblins, it just kind of makes them annoyed. You can also sneak up at them while they're sleeping and do a pretty nice damage attack by sneak attacking them. And you can also sneak up, steal their weapons, and if you get their weapons before they can run to them, then they can't attack you, really. They'll still attack you, and they'll try to look for other weapons that are laying around, but if you can sneak up and take all their weapons and shields before you attack them, then they are quite a bit easier. We're also going to cut down a couple of trees here with the axe, and you're going to want to realize that axes are going to be the best way to chop down trees. And we're going to try to collect really as much wood as we can. There's going to be a couple of side quests later on that will need a lot of wood, and having wood is also useful for when we get flint, when we finally start mining ores. And that's because if you place wood on the floor and then you place flint next to it and you strike the flint with something that is metallic, like a metallic weapon, then it will create a campfire. And you can use that fire to cook on. You can't use it as a cooking pot, but you can use it to cook on for things like baked apples and roasting fish, stuff like that. And you can also stay at that fire so you can make it nighttime or noon or morning if you want to. And sometimes switching the time of day is going to be pretty useful. There's also a couple of fireflies in this house that we're going to be heading to, and these fireflies will not be used too much yet. I'm not sure if I ever actually use them at all, but if you want to catch them, and this is a really good way to demonstrate how you catch most things that move in this game, you need to sneak. If you just run in there at full speed and try to grab them, they're going to fly away from you, and you might get 1 or 2 of them, but if you sneak around, you'll get a heck of a lot more. If you notice, I'm cutting the grass in hopes that there will be a restless cricket that's nearby, and the restless crickets are a little bit difficult to get because you cut the grass and then they fly away immediately, so you need to cut it and then mash the A button so you hope that there is one there. That way you can pick it up immediately, and we're going to need about 10 of those to finish a side quest in Kakariko Village when we eventually get there. So this is a hut of the old man, and it's kind of a nice hut, which is why I marked it on my map with a star there. Be sure to add stamps to anything that you have of interest inside of Hyrule, because you will forget it's there, and it's always better to realize that, okay, There's something there. I need to go back. I don't remember why it was interesting, but do your best to try to also remember that too. So there's 2 spicy peppers that are on the table here, and also a brand new fresh axe, which I will recommend exchanging your old one for. And you're going to want to pick up both of those peppers. So here we're going to be getting the warm doublet that this old man will give us, but first we have to wait until morning. And there's 2 ways you can do this. You can either do it by making his dish, which is described in the old man's diary here, or there's a mountain that I don't actually know exactly where it is, but there's a mountain that you can climb inside of the plateau, and the old man will be on top of it, and if you talk to him on top of the mountain, he'll give you the warm doublet. If you don't want to get the warm doublet because you don't want to climb the mountain and you don't have the necessary ingredients for this dish, which will be the Hyrule bass, the pepper, and raw meat, then you can just cook those 2 peppers, and when you cook them, you'll make a dish that will give you enough heat resistance to make it to the shrine. That's about all you're going to need from those 2 peppers, and there's also more pepper plants littered around this area, so they're not really too difficult to get a hold of, but I would just make this dish and get the warm doublet. So in the first or second video of this walkthrough, we caught a Hyrule bass by jumping into that lake, and that was what this was for. So I have 2 of them, which means I can make 2 of these. I can make 2 of these dishes, but first I have to get the raw meat. How are you going to do that, you might think? Well, if you notice those birds to the right there, they have raw meat. So sneak up and shoot one, and they should drop 1 or 2 raw drumsticks. And that's all you're going to need. So first you'll also want to come over here before you make the dish and talk to this old guy chopping down the trees. And you'll notice that he kind of wants to give you some help with the shrines. Can't really get across this gap in the canyon there. And he says, turn your hips to make the tree fall the direction you want to. And you've also picked up his axe if you've picked it up. If you haven't picked it up, just go back into the hut and go grab it. And here I'm trying, like, okay, what's the missing... I know the missing ingredient for that guy is the Hyrule bass. For some reason, I thought that I had to, like, hold it and then give it to him. But I was like, wait, no, that's not right. I need to come over here. I need to cook the dish. So we do this by coming to materials. We have to hold the bass, hold the pepper, and the raw meat. And then we dump it inside of this, and that should make the dish. Now, it's a good idea to save before you start experimenting with materials. That way you don't waste them. So save before you do this, just in case you mess up. And once you do make the dish, or once you do make the dish, talk to the old man. Say that, go through whatever this dialogue option is. Say you cooked something, and then he'll go, oh, that is in fact my dish. So then you'll let him know that the missing ingredient was the Hyrule bass, and he'll give you the warm doublet. Now this is something we're going to be using pretty extensively for cold resist, and eventually we will be needing more cold resist. So if you find a lot of peppers, pick those up, because the easiest way to get cold resistance is this warm doublet and cooking up peppers. That will give you double, which is pretty much all you're going to need for the main quest. A little bit later we will be getting armor that makes us unfreezable, and that'll be pretty fun, so, you know, we'll be able to get that eventually, but for now we're just doing this kind of the bare bones way, the easiest way that it doesn't take too long to get a hold of. This game, since it's also so open world, it might be 10 minutes before you go get a certain armor, it might be like 10 hours. I mean, it's really kind of an odd thing. So there's a couple of things I would recommend having in your inventory most of the time if you can spare it. So those things would be a torch and an axe. You can knock down trees with bombs, so an axe isn't totally necessary. If you blow up a tree twice then with a bomb, then you'll be able to get wood from it. So an axe isn't totally necessary, but an axe does save a lot of time. And a torch is just extremely useful, even though most of the times in the game, when a torch is required, it will give you the required item. Very, very rarely will this game ever have a challenge that it won't give you all the necessary tools to solve, but it's just better, I think, to have a torch around just in case you might want to warm yourself up, because if you light a torch and you carry it around and you're too cold, and then the torch will keep you warm. But otherwise it might just be maybe for that once or twice that the torch that is laying there isn't there for some reason, or if it's broken, or if you broke it accidentally. I mean, it's just always good to have an extra torch. So on this other side of the cliff, there are a couple of bokoblins we're going to take out, which I already did. Then we're going to blow up these cracked walls, so keep an eye out for that. There's usually something good inside. Sometimes it's just enemies, but enemies in a way are treasures on their own because they drop a lot of pretty cool things. And I'm just going to take a short trip to the right here. We're still on that path. And we're going to look up here. This is just straight across from the trees. I didn't go anywhere. So we're just going to look up here and we're going to see all of these ledges which will lead us to the shrine on top of this place. Now you don't have to come this way to get to the shrine, but this is one of the easier ways to get there. And the old man is there, of course. You also get the warm doublet, so this is the way I would recommend doing it. On these cliff sides, you'll notice some growing mushrooms. These are called rushrooms, and if you cook them, then you will get some stamina, or not stamina, but you'll get a speed boost for Link. So that can be a little bit helpful if you want to get to places quickly, but I would recommend not cooking them at all. They're not really too useful, and there's a side quest where 55 of them are required, so you can get a diamond. I'm pretty sure that you can sell rushrooms, 55 of them. Pretty sure you can sell 55 rushrooms for more than 500 rupees. Maybe not. I don't actually know what rushrooms are worth. But a diamond's worth 500 rupees, and diamonds are pretty tough to come by, plus they can be really useful for some powerful gear later on in the game. So I think that is worth doing. Just collect as many of these as you can. When you see them, try to go for them as long as they're not way too out of the way. And then, of course, work your way up this mountain. Keep an eye on your stamina. If you push X, you can jump up, and that'll get you to where you want to go a little bit quicker, but it does waste a lot more stamina. If you climb straight up, you'll get further than you would if you jumped straight up. So only jump if you know for a fact you can get there, and it can help save quite a bit of time. This is mainly why I suggest having about 1.5 wheels of stamina, because in most places that'll give you just enough stamina to jump a few times without running out. I kind of wish this game didn't have a stamina wheel, but I guess it sort of does balance the whole climbing thing, because being able to climb everywhere would probably make things just a little bit too easy, and this game is already challenging enough, so I guess, you know, more challenge is always better. It's a good thing when games finally go back to being not, you know, painfully, go here and do this, and anyway. So here is the third shrine that we're going to be getting in, and this is Owadame, even though the names of the shrines don't really matter, the Stasis Trial. So this, I think I mentioned the bombs and also the magnesis are going to be among the most used runes, but Stasis is arguably the most useful once you get it upgraded. So for now, we're not going to be able to freeze anything more than just objects and other things that we'll be experiencing inside of this trial. But once we upgrade Stasis, we'll be able to freeze enemies, and that will be immensely helpful. Even though my Stasis on my other file is upgraded, I don't actually use it more or often enough. I need to remember that it does freeze enemies, because it's probably the toughest one to upgrade since you need 3 ancient cores, and those are a little bit tough to come by. So anyway, just Stasis your way here. Just open up this the Stasis thing inside of your Sheikah. What? I don't even know what I'm trying to say right now. Just open up Stasis. Okay, select it. Stop time on that gear, and then run across before it drops down. It kind of reminds me of Ratchet and Clank a little bit. And then realize that you'll be able to also stop these boulders when they are rolling down the hill. But, of course, do not forget that your Stasis has to recharge. If you forget that, then that boulder will roll you over, and it's possible you will die. So just freeze the boulder, or the big rolling ball, I guess, and in some of these rolling balls, you'll be able to come up right here and crouch, and they'll roll right over you, but this one's not big enough. So don't try to do that right now. Just wait for that to roll down and then run straight up, and you can grab this chest if you want. You don't really have to get it. You can skip it. I don't even know what's in here. I think just... Oh, okay, a slightly better shield, you know. If you want a better shield, then go ahead. Don't be afraid to drop crappier shields for better ones, because, you know, your inventory is going to be pretty limited for a while, and it's always better to have more damage reduction than less of it. Okay, so then run on back down here, and we're going to learn something else that will absolutely destroy your weapons. So we're going to drop something here. I think I'm going to drop this club. And then we're going to pick up this iron warhammer, or the sledgehammer. So the sledgehammer is awesome because it can break ores that we'll be seeing throughout the overworld. And that's why I'm wasting my pitchfork on this. And the way this works is kind of stored momentum, I guess. So you stasis the object, attack it a few times with a weapon you don't care about because it's going to damage it pretty greatly. And once the stasis wears off, that item is going to burst in the direction that the arrow is. So we're going to be using that in a couple of shrines later on, and of course a couple of other places, but that's just kind of the general tutorial of how that works. So that'll be the end of this shrine, and the next video will be the final shrine on the Great Plateau.